Hello and welcome to Technicolor, your go-to guide to all things tech and art. We're here to help keep you up to date on how the digital revolution is changing the world of art and museums. I'm your host, Libby Clark.
And I'm your co-host, Britt Rissmann. And this week we'll be discussing children's early learning within the future of GLAM.
And we'll be chatting with specialists Dr. Louisa Penfold of Harvard University and Laura Much of Gomez Children's Art Centre to unpack how digital technologies are intersecting with GLAM spaces and shaping knowledge access and creativity for kids.
Well, without further ado, let's get into it. Take it away, Libby.
Over the last few years, there has been an overwhelming amount of research and discussion into the pros and cons of digital tech. There are a million theories circulating. Everyone has their own opinions, and there's no greater technology debate in the world than what a digital lifestyle means for learning, play, and overall childhood development. Digital play is unique in its offering, and the digital pivot is not just inevitable, but a worthwhile opportunity. GLAM institutions ultimately need to be frontrunners in this integration. Digital tech, when done right, helps kids with the acquisition of essential knowledge and skills relevant to today and to their future. Through our interviews, we're going to touch on some really interesting ideas within this subject. Ultimately, what we will unpack throughout these interviews in this episode are the multitude of exciting new pathways and opportunity tech offers our GLAM institution, and how digital integration opens up a whole new world of creative possibilities for kids and families to engage with the GLAM sector.
And to kick off the interviews, Technicolor correspondent Ellie Jansen sat down with UQ Museum Studies alumna Dr. Louisa Penfold. Dr. Louisa currently works at Harvard University undertaking her postdoctoral research in early childhood education. Louisa's work aims to support artists, designers and educators in constructing creative learning environments for children, and she is passionate about how the arts can be used to support children's divergent learning.
How have you envisaged using technology in forms of play to encourage learning?
A big part of the work that I've done over the past 5 years has looked at different ways that contemporary artists and designers explore materials. So the different techniques and processes that they use and develop, the different concepts that they explore, the different materials themselves that they fabricate, and how we can then put that into a form that children can then take up and explore through their own play. Technology can be used in various different capacities to support children's engagement with artworks and to also facilitate the creative process further. And so, one way that I use technology on an ongoing basis is around the process of pedagogical documentation, which was originally developed for Reggio Emilia preschools, but I think it's something that the gallery sector can actually learn from a lot as well, because it's a process of recording children's creative learning, so the different interactions that they have with artworks and materials and creative process, and taking photos and videos, different artifacts of that, and then displaying that, sharing that with others, using it as a form of reflection. And so I think technology is a really powerful way to facilitate that. I guess my critique of technology in museums is probably consistent with my critique of core education approaches in general. It's when they are used in a really directive way. It doesn't actually support children to make new connections and to express themselves and to actually scaffold learning over time. It's kind of very directive. There's just so much amazing technology stuff that's going on out there, that's being developed by artists in terms of motion sensors and machine learning, and interactive theatre is a really great model for how technology can be used to create these really immersive participatory experiences with kids. They would be my immediate thoughts around technology and play in museums.
Fantastic, thank you. Do you consider at times that digital technology compromises engagement and or learning with the physical environment?
I think it's very dependent on how it's being used. And, I went to a museum before the pandemic hit, and this was a kids space, and then they had all of these tablets, and the tablet was literally record a 10-second video of you kind of dancing, and then it did this animation thing and you send it to yourself. As someone who has a PhD in art education, this is not what children's engagement with art is about. I feel like it can be just shallow. But I think that also they've totally missed any understanding of progressive education and pedagogy, of how to facilitate young children's inquiry-based learning.
That's a really interesting way of looking at that. It's not a divide of the medium, be analogue or technology.
No, it's about pedagogy understanding, absolutely.
Would you say that there's a building expectation to incorporate digital technologies within programming?
It's not a dichotomy between technology and like hands-on learning. Those two things can very much complement one another. This push towards doing things digitally, whilst I feel it still is important that we spend time now reconnecting with our sensory systems and doing hands-on stuff, I think it has opened up a whole new world of possibilities around collaboration.
Fantastic. Thank you, Ellie, and thank you, Dr. Penfold. And now, to take a step away from the more theoretical, our colleague Madeline Lloyd speaks to Laura Mudge of Goma's Children's Arts Centre.
Hi, Laura. Oh, thank you so much for taking some time to have a chat with us and share your expertise. I really appreciate it. Did you want to maybe start us off by just introducing yourself and your career and what it is that you and your team do with Goma?
Yeah, sure. My name's Laura Mudge. I'm the Senior Program Officer for the Children's Arts Centre at the Queensland Art Gallery and Gallery of Modern Art. I've worked there for about 11 years now, and I work with contemporary artists along with a team of different staff in the gallery to develop interactive projects, especially for children and families.
So, Laura, for any of our listeners who haven't had the opportunity to either visit Goma or interact with the children's art spaces, what would you be able to maybe give us a little bit of insight as to what those spaces tend to look like?
So we have a dedicated space in the Gallery of Modern Art for the Children's Arts Centre, so the park level of Goma. And we do also have another smaller exhibition space as well, which we typically use. We always look at, different modes for children to be able to engage with those ideas through hands-on interactives, very much focused on sort of play-based learning and being able to be creative and make things as a way of kind of introducing children to contemporary art and ideas.
Fantastic. So it sounds like particularly with this exhibit, there is a mix of analog and digital activities in those spaces. Is that kind of balance between analog and digital something that's particularly important to your team, something you have to be conscious about when designing, or is it just something that organically happens?
Yeah, our starting point is always the ideas. So working with that artist to work out what is the key kind of concept or ideas that they want to explore in the project and introduce children to. And then from there, we work out what's the sort of best way to deliver that. We tend to consider, having a balance between some making hands-on kind of style of activities, and then also where we have some digital components as well.
Do you notice any kind of engagement trends? I mean, looking at your 11-year tenure with the department and with Goma, and how engagement with digital technologies has changed so much over that time, dealing with young demographics. Are you noticing patterns in their engagement? Are they more drawn to the multimodal activities, or is there still a real pull to those analog creative activities?
There's definitely still a demand for the analog activities, and we know from feedback from our audiences that they do appreciate having drawing activities and having things that aren't all digital, it isn't all screen-based. We do also certainly incorporate digital components. Sometimes it can be a bit of a hybrid as well, where there might be a making component and then also it incorporates a digital aspect as well. It does always come back to the ideas and making sure that we're not just using digital technologies for the sake of it, but it does have a purpose.
Okay, interesting. And with digital activities, are they kind of set and forget? So once you've trialed them, installed them, they're all good? Or has there been a lot of development throughout the exhibit as well to make sure that they are serving your audiences as best they can?
They do tend to need a little bit of tweaking, I'd say. So we trial all of our activities with children, regardless of what kind of approach they take.
Are there any examples of some of your digital activities which have either unexpectedly completely flopped or been so much more successful and popular than you and your team were expecting?
Nothing kind of sticks out as a complete failure.
That's good.
Which is good. I think because we do trial things and there is a development, there is a process before we kind of get to that point. Some of the things that have been really popular are projects that are a bit of a hybrid.
Obviously, there is a lot of ongoing talk and research into whether technology is helping or hindering early learning or whether it's creating passive participation. Is that something that compromises your early learning objectives through these spaces?
We do always have sort of multiple ways for children to engage with the content. So I think having this multimodal approach is beneficial. Children are still kind of having opportunities to have creative expression in what they're doing as well. So, for example, for APT 10 kids at the moment, Shannon Novak's project has a multimedia interactive where children are invited to create their own flag that represents them and what makes them happy. And by doing that as a digital interactive, it really provides opportunities to make that a bit more expansive than what you could do as a making activity.
I guess the digital technology is offering them so many more creative avenues than paper and pen would.
Yeah, that's right.
Thank you so much for your time and all your insight.
No worries. Bye.
That concludes today's episode. We really hope you enjoyed the discussion around digital technology and whether it helps or hinders children's learning in GLAM sectors. In the episode's show notes, you'll find links to Louisa's blog and to Goma's online children's arts centre, along with a few other resources. Please follow us on Instagram and Twitter for updates and join us for our next episode, What's New with NFTs? Technicolor is brought to you by Libby Clark as host, Madeline Lloyd as researcher and interviewer, and Brittany Rissmann as producer, editor and occasional ad-libber.